Good morning. Welcome to You Can't Say That. I'm Greg.
And I am Al. Yes, we're going to say some things today, I think. We got to say some things. Get this country back on the right track.
Yes, and the red hat twins are just the guys to do it.
Well, we're the dueling red hats. And I'm becoming the Trumpster. I'm becoming the Trumpster more and more. Why is that, Greg? I know. Part of it is just to irritate you a little bit.
Yeah.
But part of it is just, well, when you see what's going on now, you got to think, gosh, I wish I had somebody that just was bold again. I mean, we can deal with all the other stuff, but just to have a bold leader, someone that doesn't shuffle his feet as he walks across the stage. Goodness gracious.
So
It's embarrassing.
on that topic, I've got this photograph here where you visited, I guess, the Trump store somewhere. What's up with that? Is that where you got the hat?
Oh, yes. Yeah. So here's the deal. I'm heading out in that direction the other day, and I see the Trump store. And I've seen it before. You know, if you go 220 north, 220 south, yeah, and right in the Boones Mill area.
I
On
know
the
where
right side.
I know where you're talking about.
Yeah, it's an old church. You have stained glass windows all over, but there's just all this Trump stuff, and there's like a 20-foot cardboard cutout of Trump standing there too. But we were just so curious, so we stopped in.
You know,
and
that 20-foot Trump is sounding an awful lot like a golden calf to me.
I know it. You are right, Greg. We got to be careful. So, we went into the store, and it's huge, and it's packed with 2020 Trump stuff, but then a lot of 2024 Trump stuff. So I bought a couple things. I bought a hat. I got a little sweatshirt. I mean, they're giving the stuff away now, which is nice. The older stuff they are, which I never got any Trump stuff. So just for memorabilia sakes, it was cool. But I started talking to the guy that I bought it from that's there. And I said, well, who owns this? Well, who do you think owns it? It's a guy named Whitey Taylor.
And Whitey Taylor owns that store?
Yeah.
I've heard of him.
Okay, so he used to own the Franklin County Speedway.
Yeah.
He may still. I'm not in the race car driving, but I met Whitey Taylor in the bank a few years ago. It was right around the time that the eclipse of the sun was happening, and everybody was running around trying to get those glasses. You remember? Well, Whitey knew me from being on the board of supervisors. I think it was maybe right when I had started. And so he started up a conversation, and he told me that he had bought like 20,000 pairs of these glasses and had headed down to Tennessee that week, the prior week, and was distributing them, selling them through, I think, McDonald's or some different places, and made a killing. I mean, he was buying them, I think, for a few bucks and selling them for $20 or whatever the going rate was at the time. And I thought, isn't this guy interesting? Now, what he does when Trump was doing all of his rallies, he has this big bus.
Oh, is he the guy that would go and sell the Trump stuff? He'd drive across. Yeah. Oh, okay. I didn't know that was Whitey. Wow.
Well, maybe there are other people out there selling stuff at Trump rallies, but he is a big Trump guy. And he's an entrepreneur, and he's a very interesting guy. So anyway, I don't know. So I just was, impulse buy.
So do you want to do tent city, ESG, or gas prices in LA to start?
Okay, let's do ESG because it sounds a little boring, but it is a topic I want to talk about.
All right, I got the map up here you sent.
Okay, so let me kind of lay the foundation for what this is, and I've heard this on a couple talk shows, but I've also heard it in the main news. So where we're moving, climate change and social justice and all this stuff, I mean, you hear it all the time, but it is now moving at an unprecedented speed into the financial markets and into major corporations. So there's a company called BlackRock Investing. It's kind of like Merrill Lynch and Goldman Sachs and all that, but it's the largest, okay? And it's run by a guy named Larry Fink. And a lot of Larry Fink's guys are now in the Biden administration. And they've been in every administration. They're always trying to get into administrations to direct policy and stuff. But what's happening now, and this is getting a little scary because there's such a force behind it, is that companies are now being rated on their environmental, social justice, governance philosophy in the companies. And if you do well, if you're strong on climate change, if you're strong on social justice and all that kind of stuff, you get a higher rating. And they push your company out to investors more. Now, the interesting thing is that Trump in 2020, before he left in October, they passed some legislation that said you could not use this to rate companies for 401ks, because what was happening is we've just totally forgotten about how well a company performs, like financially, like, are they a sound company? Forget that. Now we're like social justice and climate change. Well, you can lead a lot of people astray by talking about all those things and not actually talking about is the company a sound financial company. So Trump had tried to get in there and not allow brokerage companies to start pushing that because it can confuse people. So we're going to have a little fight there. But the interesting thing about that map was showing how many companies are now getting rated for their ESG score. And it reminds me very much of what's going on in China with individuals getting a score, a social, I think theirs is a social score of some kind, like, what sites do you visit, who you've given money to, and they wrap it all up and you get a score. And if you get a low score, you may not be able to borrow money. You may not be able to do this or do that.
Well, in China, America, it goes so far as to decide what order you're going to be if you make a doctor's appointment. And when you go to ride public transportation, there's going to be certain sections that are cattle car for people with low social scores. Yes. You may not even be able to ride if you want to travel. You may not be able to get a visa to travel in and out of China if your social score isn't high enough. They won't let you leave. They're in China. It's slowly turning into the way you're going to be given, allowed, or disallowed access to basically everything in your life. Eventually, it'll come down to food. It'll come, once it really takes hold.
Well, you're right, Greg. And, I think in China, they can do it to individuals because you got a dictatorship and they just walk in line. I think in America, if you started that, it's going to creep in, but I think it's creeping in. Corporate America is buying in because corporate America and governments are, meshing together more and more. And it's the one thing that caught me off guard when I was in Roanoke County supervisor in government. I thought, I always thought that there was a battle going on with business and government. And I was always on the side of business because as terrible as businesses can be, you still don't have to go buy anything from them, right? So if Walmart wants to charge you $100 for a loaf of bread, I don't need to go to Walmart. I can just go somewhere else and buy my loaf of bread. So, and if they were going to do something dumb, I just don't go visit them. The only problem with government, if government does something dumb, you can't go anywhere else. That's what you got. Yeah. So I've always been on the side of businesses, no matter how terrible they were. Now you really have a collusion with business and government to a degree. Wow, I've hardly ever seen it. And I think big businesses especially, they want as much regulation as possible to weed out the little guy from competing.
And that's the model that the Italians handed the world in the World War II period was the fascist collusion of the business world, the big business leaders who controlled resources and controlled business, and the government. he managed to get all of them together. So so the movers and shakers of business in Italy were just a wing of the government at the time. They were all colluding together, and now that's essentially what we have going on here. Now there is a battle between government and some businesses, because the ones who are not playing ball with this system, you're in a battle with the government. But the ones who have influence, power, connection, have people on the inside and are getting government to do their bidding, to set up the rules to favor their sector, to set up the rules to favor their company against the competition. Or, for example, in the farming industry, to set up rules for farming that only giant corporate farms have the resources to be able to do. Small farmers are working on such a small scale, they can't. The rules actually aren't. Not only shouldn't apply to them, they're not even about them. Like, the rules don't make sense for a small farmer. They might make sense for Purdue, who might have 500 buildings on a piece of property full of chickens and chicken poop, right? And so to manage, one of the aspects of that, to manage the safety or environmental impact, you have a set of rules to govern that. But they've made it so that a small farmer who might have one small building with 24 chickens, well, he's got to succumb to the same regulation, even though what he's doing and how he's raising chickens and what he's producing doesn't have the impact that Purdue does, and he can't afford to abide the regs. So the big corporate farming interests, that's how they're getting rid of local farms, buying the land, buying the farmers out, and moving our entire food production into a corporate structure, where the corporate structure is in cahoots with the government, which is how our food supply is almost completely controlled by government. We're this close now. And this was warned about decades ago, but nobody listened. And, all those commercials back in the 70s and 80s that you used to watch, Face the Nation. And, okay, remember they were sponsored by AIG, sponsored by Archer Daniels Midland, supermarket to the world. And everybody thought, oh, it's so nice that they're involved and helping the political process. No, what they were doing was getting involved in the political process so that he could ensure for themselves regulations that would kill their competition, would send subsidy money to farming. Archer Daniels Midland is partly responsible for the reason why rich people in the political class that own farms are getting subsidies not to farm them. The corn subsidies. Remember, they pay you not to do it because they were trying to control the price, control the output, control supply.
That's correct. Control the price.
They were all involved. The whole thing was a scam for all of these rich, connected people that owned these farms to be able to make bank by taking our tax money and giving it to them to not farm. The whole thing was a scam. Anyway, well, that's what's been going on, and it's been going on right in front of everybody's face all this time. All right,
so now we're at another stage, and the map that I put up there that it's shown is that it shows over 6,000 publicly traded companies around the world are buying in and are getting an ESG score now. So it's all over the world. It's not just in America. There are companies all over the world that now are getting rated by this score. And for an investor, like I invest money in stocks, in a multitude of stocks. So what's happening now is supposedly individual investors like myself, if I have, let's say, 20 stocks and they're in 20 different companies because I think they're the best run and would make me the best return, well, those companies may not have the best social, environmental governance score. So then it reflects on me because I am an investor in that company. I get a bad score. So that's where the pressure comes down on the individual now. So I invest in whatever. Now, most of the big companies now are succumbing to going with a score and changing a little bit of their direction about profit, et cetera, more to environmental things, because you get some of these big companies, and BlackRock, the reason I brought up that company, BlackRock invests money in things like GE and Exxon and all that. Well, if you're not going along with the rating and you have a bad rating, they will drop you from their portfolio. Mm-hmm. You get dropped from the portfolio of a big financial company, management company, you're dead.
Yeah, people may not realize this, but there's two reasons why what you're describing is happening. One reason it's happening is because of the collusion of government, the political class, and their attempt to profit off of the green and environmental industry. You know, the face of it looks like they're just trying to, save the planet, save the environment, but it's interesting that nothing they do to save the environment, there's none of those actions aren't making them billions of dollars. So it's hard to believe they're just concerned about the planet when every solution to the environment is one that enriches the living crap out of themselves. So that's a little suspect. The other reason is that we've raised up a couple generations now, the millennials, those that follow them, where they hate profit. They've been trained to be socialists and feel guilty, and profit is evil, and saving Mother Earth is good. So if you want to appeal to these two generations of Americans, we created this monster, and now we're going to have to feed the monster. And what the monster wants is an environmentally friendly, fast food chain, not a fast food chain that actually
makes a good burger or something, makes good food.
Right, that makes a good product and makes a profit for its investors. They don't care about that. They just want to know, are they doing good work? And then they'll eat crappy food from somebody who's where the money is going to save the environment.
Right. Well, let me add, because I see Truth Guardians has wrote a little comment there talking about that a lot of this push and pressure is coming from the employees, which is right down your line, is that you raise up a generation of people that all they're concerned about is climate change, and the world is going to be destroyed if we don't drive a little Yugo or ride our bicycles to work every day. That generation is putting pressure because they are being indoctrinated. So it's a kind of a vicious cycle, which came first.
And they didn't,
on both sides, I think.
Yeah, they didn't just believe the lies they were told, Al. Many of them are literally gripped in mortal fear over the idea the world is going to end because of the global warming stuff that they were raised up believing. So, and it's kind of like that situation got out of hand. Is getting even more out of hand, the same way that the COVID thing is out of hand. They use the COVID response for a lot of socio-political plans, right? Scared the daylights out of people, and now that they've kind of got what they wanted out of it, and the whole COVID response thing is winding down, we're discovering that there's a whole group of people that even when the same person who told them to put on a mask, social distance, and you're going to die if you don't stay home, even if the same person that told them that now tells them everything's okay, it doesn't stick because they scared them to such a degree that you can't unscare them now. Even this was never an enormously dangerous thing to begin with, but they believed it was. But now that the people pushing it, it's kind of falling to the wayside. Things are slowly moving back into a post-COVID shutdown situation where a lot of normalcy we may be able to get back. For those people, they're gonna be COVID clingers. They're not going to be able to let go because they were scared to such a great degree. You can't just unscare them. They're going to carry that forward. And they're going to still be looking at us like we hate people because we won't wear a mask. They're going to be, everywhere they go, they're going to be incensed that nobody's still social distancing. There's going to be retribution. And these people are going to be definitely unhappy. And they're going to make everybody around them unhappy because of what was done to them.
Well, Greg, let me ask you this, because you're talking about masks now. We'll kind of just take a little turn for a second. It's so humiliating. The other day, I'm listening to the radio, and there's this ad on, it's at least on WFIR. It may be on some other ones, but it's a public service announcement ad but it's got a guy with a real Southern drawl. And he goes, you all folks down in Southwest Virginia, we're working through this and you got to wear your mask. But he's talking in a Southern dialect, folksy like, telling people that they got to keep their mask on. And I thought, how degrading. Like, they're figuring out that the folks down in Southwest Virginia maybe aren't adhering to this silly philosophy that you got to scare yourself to death and wear masks. Although I do see a lot of mask wearing, but we may be less in other areas. So they got to create an ad specifically tailored with a guy with a Southern Virginia voice and using the word you all and folks and all that kind of stuff so that we think like this is a kind of a country thing to do, to gather together and put your mask on. It is so, I don't know. It just shows you what evil will masquerade itself to look like some little hometown guy telling you to put your mask on. And it is a concerted effort by a bigger scheme, but they got it down to the voice, to the inflection, to the words they use to get that little guy on a farm somewhere or, sitting out on his back porch to put his mask on because that's the right thing to do. It is so terrible. But anyway, kind of wrap up a little bit on the ESG thing. I think this is a great topic because you can see, and as a believer, you kind of look to the last days where you get that mark of the beast and you can't buy unless you have the mark. And, you're kind of like looking. And I used to make fun that the mask that I think that John, who wrote Revelation, actually mistook writing the word mark of the beast, and it should have really been the mask of the beast. He actually put an R instead of an S, and we got the mark of the beast instead of the mask of the beast because it seemed like you can't do anything without a mask.
Okay.
But
so you do know Revelations wasn't written in English, right?
Right.
It was written in. It was.
You're
written
right. You got me on that one. So whatever it was probably New Testament Greek, I guess Aramaic or whatever they call it. That's a good point, Greg. So they translated it wrong from mask, and it should have been mask, but they said mark. But anyway, going back to that thing, at ESG score, that ESG score, hey, that may be your 3-digit number on your forehead that says you can buy or you can't buy, you can trade, you can eat.
Right.
But what it shows, and I think we don't know what that will actually be, but it definitely seems that we are being like cattle to the slaughter or sheep to the slaughter. We're being brought in more narrow and narrow. And if you start going down their track, you're doomed. You've got to keep going down that way or you're going to starve or die. I find that very interesting. But we'll keep a track on that old ESG score and what it means and the pressure it's going to put on businesses and people.
Yeah, there's going to be more of it unless people say no to this stuff.
Hey, let's go to a little tent city.
You want to do tent city?
Yeah.
All right.
This is a local story, and I'm telling you, I'm staying on top of this one, and I'm going to get the news media. I'm going to get everybody involved. This is just a little clip that shows you right outside. If you take the exit off of 581 Hirschberger, and then you go around like you're going to go to the airport or whatever. You go around that little exit. This is on your right side. This is just a little clip, and the only reason I put that clip up there is that was like last week. I actually saw a police officer.
Do you know who the people are following the police officer that have those clipboards?
Yeah, that's a homeless assistance team. There are 2 people with little backpacks on. They're part of the hat team. And so I was confirmed that by the folks at Roanoke City Council said that they confirmed that was the social workers, the hat team that were out there. Now, my thoughts were, oh, that's great. So these people are going to come out there. I have no problem with that. We have some homeless people. Let's get them some help. Let's get them off the street. First of all, living on those grounds is a humiliation. Nobody should live like that because we talked about this, Greg. I mean, you're not going camping on public grounds. What you're doing is most likely you're urinating, defecating, doing all kinds of things because I'm going to tell you something. At 8 o'clock, you need to go to the restroom. You're not walking an hour to Walmart to use the restroom. You're not doing it.
Well, there's a Sam's Wholesale right there, and a Kroger.
You're not doing that either.
Right there. It's
Greg,
right there.
If you need to go to the restroom,
it's right there.
Well, let me take 20 to 30 minutes to take a journey. You're not doing it.
Believe me, you're not doing it. Kroger isn't even 1 minute walk from right there. It's right behind that tree line.
That's not true. But anyway, believe me, you go look at that area, and you're going to see more than just people having a good time and enjoying the environment. Well, if you think about it,
they picked a good place to camp because they're right there near the liquor store. You're in a 1 minute walk to Kroger, liquor store. You got the Home Depot. Lowe's. If you need to get some plastic for your tent hovel, I mean, I think it's a very smart location they chose. It's in the tree line. It's kind of hidden, and it's close to services. Looks to me like they did put some planning into this.
These people are being strategic in their placement of their tents. Okay, possibly. But let me tell you, the other day, a friend told me that there were children out there. Now, I'm going to tell you something. We're going to get ourselves into some serious issues here, and we better be very careful. So, all kidding aside, I got it, freedom and all that. But you start getting children out there, that there's some drug use, possibly. Vehicles have shown up on that property that are not government vehicles. And I just sent a letter out, another email, including the city manager, saying, guys, everywhere you look in this country that we've had this kind of thing start, you better be very careful. It never ends well. You're going to have sexual issues that are going to start happening. You're going to have drug issues that are going to start happening. And it never ends well, Greg. I'm going to just tell you, we may be all about freedom, but I'm just telling you, I don't like the look of that. And I'll tell you what, when you look around from there, it's also a good stop maybe because all these guys then go and put their signs out there to ask for money. And so you got money coming in.
They're right there where they can stand at the corner, and there's lots of traffic coming off of Hirschberger. They can beg for money. That's a great location, Al. I mean, I think they're really onto something.
Hey, well, somebody told me there's a post that says you got to have a Sam's membership to get into Sam's, which is correct.
But not Kroger.
So those guys are spending $50. Although it would be a great deal. You pay $100 a year or $50 a year. You got full restroom usage for a year. I mean, that's not a bad deal. Go in, get out of the heat, get out of the rain.
And you could use it at any Sam's across the country. So if you migrated from one place to another, every area's got a Sam's Wholesale. Your membership is good all over the country.
Yeah.
How about that? Yeah.
So these guys are a lot smarter than we're thinking. I think so. Yeah.
I don't know, but now you got me curious.
I want to go over there. There's a methadone clinic.
Yeah, I want to go over and talk to them. Now I'm curious about them.
Yeah, I think you'd be the guy, Greg. I think maybe we could have an interview. I mean, I would seriously, because all kidding aside a little bit on this issue, I would really like to solve issues like this. Like, I don't like it because it's trashy and it's just not good. I would love for these people to start, get themselves up, get a nice shower, clean up, do something productive for society than just sitting there. Because I don't think any of them are paying taxes, quite frankly. So if you want to talk about public, they'd be the last ones that should have the ability to use it.
Well, they're paying some taxes. When they go to that liquor store behind them, they're paying a lot of tax to the state right there.
Yeah, okay. You got me on that.
All right. You want to, and we'll keep an eye on that. I am interested. Now I am curious about the people that are there, though.
It's getting larger. I'll tell you, that encampment is getting larger. And, I've seen it. I was in Seattle about a year ago.
If we're not careful, Al, it'll turn into a full-blown hippie jam. They'll have drums and acoustic guitars. Once that happens, it'll take over everything. You don't want to.
Well, Greg, let me tell you this. There's a guy that comes in at Sweet Frog. He's a homeless guy, but he's very well educated. He has a dog. And I asked him the other day, what do you do? He goes, on the weekends, when the weather is good, he plays his guitar downtown and makes about $300 a weekend. for playing his guitar. And when he comes in, a Sweet Frog, he is so nice. He gives me to pay. He pulls out a pocket of change. I mean, he's my change supplier. He pulls out all this change, and that's how he pays. But he's making money actually using a talent that he has in music downtown. But I don't know where he sleeps and stuff, but he goes over a lot to the hibachis and gets food. But he is so nice, very well educated, very courteous, the whole deal.
See?
But anyway, he's making money. So maybe some of these other guys, maybe he sleeps there. I'm not sure.
I tell the story a lot. I won't today, but I will revisit it if somebody asks. I'll tell the story of Chief, our 3-decade homeless beggar at the University of Tennessee. It's a fascinating story. When he died, everybody kind of found out who Chief really was, and he wasn't homeless. It's a fascinating story, but it's a long one, and we got to move on to gas prices in California.
Oh yeah. So I'm reading this story about that for the last month and a half, basically, the gas prices have been going up every single day, and it made me think, boy, when I'm filling up my car, I mean, I don't know, I guess everybody's noticing this, but gas prices are going through the roof. And I'm just kind of curious if anybody else is thinking, you talk about energy prices, and Trump did such a great job, it seems like, pushing energy, any kind of energy. I know the pipelines and all the stuff that he's doing, because we run on energy. And right now we run on natural energy, not, solar powered cars or electric cars or whatever. But I'm just wondering, Biden came in, and it seems like almost automatically prices are going up every day. And even here in Roanoke.
Okay. So they went up first because all the businesses in the chain of providing gas to a gas station were anticipating the supply to decrease and for prices to go up. So they started raising prices.
Due to what? Due to a Biden administration?
Due to the policies on import, export, transport, taxes, everything involved. They knew it was going to go back to basically like what was done to them during Obama. So having experienced that, they kind of knew how it was going to go, and they didn't wait for it to happen. They were proactive. So the first price increases weren't because things were actually happening yet. It was like a market reaction. It was like when Trump got elected, he wasn't even in office yet. And big companies were already ordering steel. They were ordering more train cars to be made. It was because the business world, they have the gist of what to expect from one candidate or another, and they expect this is going to go south, so we got to start reacting now, or it's going to catch us off guard, a few months from now. Now we're actually into the spot where everything's kind of backfilled, and the prices are going up because it's all happening. But initially it started going up right after the election last November. The prices started creeping up back then, and that was because the market is speculating on what the environment was going to be like 2 months down the road, and they were already reacting to it before it happened. And now it's happening.
So let me make a point on that. For people that listen and think, oh, Biden, the Democrats, they're for the little guy and all that kind of stuff. Think about what everybody uses as a car. And, you may think, whatever, you're going to get a $1,400 stimulus check. Woo! The amount of money you're going to be spending this year on just filling up your gas tank basically wipes out anything that you think you may be getting. So it's interesting how the Democrats are always for the little guy, and yet at the gas pump, when you're going to spend an extra several dollars every time you go fill up your gas tank, your money just disappears. And it's one of those silent things, although people notice the gas tank, but they just add to extra few dollars. Man, that just takes money from you. It's like an extra tax on you every single time.
Yeah, and to be honest about this, the Democrats are not for the little guy. Democrats are for whatever segmented group of the population can be used for their political endeavors. And if it means, putting up the "we're for the little guy" front, then it's the little guy. If it means if what they need is to put up the "we're for minorities" front, then they put that front up. It's not because they're going to put policies in place to do anything that's ultimately and correctly helpful for any of these groups. These groups are just tools to an end. So the general and it works since the media is as a part of their world. The leftists and the establishment of the political class in our country, I mean, they're married to our media. So whatever they want, that's the propaganda you see on the TV news, the newspapers, on whatever it is. And they've pushed these ideas that Democrats are for minorities and women and poor people and the hardworking blue collar workers, and that it's perception. It's not reality. Yeah, the reality is all of those people it's going to cost more to heat their houses. Everything will cost more because anything that gets transported. Remember when prices and food and everything else were going up back in the 2010 to 2016
yes, because
to 2012 era, it wasn't because it was more expensive to make a tomato. It was because it was so much more expensive to run the tractor and then put it in a truck and drive it across the country. And
so it affects every price of every item. You're right. And so it's not just at the gas tank.
Their excuse, the cover for this is you got to save the planet. I mean, they wrap all of this bad regulation and bad policy that is in favor of their friends' energy investments and against the Republicans' friends' energy investments. They wrap all that in saving the planet. So it's the same thing as masks and the virus, Al. If you're against these policies because it made gas expensive, then you hate Mother Earth and you want us to die from global warming. If you won't put on a mask, it's not because it's not necessary. It's because you want people to die from COVID. They have the perfect built-in argument and attack for every one of these fake, false flag, manipulated, fascist pieces of public policy that they push. They all have the most perfect messaging, and it's just utterly amazing how effective the enemy is at pulling this stuff off. It's
well, let me add this to it.
Sometimes
I guess there was a time when you needed some kind of policy at the end of the day that was good for the average person, because when it comes time to vote, that person looks at his pocketbook and starts voting for the one that helped them the most. But it seems now, if also combined with what you're saying, you also fix the elections and you have sketchy, if not total fraud in elections, you don't even need any of your policies to really work anymore. You just do them. And when election time comes around, you still win, because who knows if the votes were real or not. And the Democrat wins again. And everybody says, oh, I guess they were doing a good job, even though everyone starts suffering from the policies. Because, eventually policies do make it to where you live. And you start feeling like, wow, it's costing me $70 to fill up my tank. It only cost me $40. I'm actually spending more money. And then you go vote against it, and your vote doesn't count, and the guy gets in again, and you wonder, wait, what's going on? We are going to get into that trap.
Well, they've got almost a more effective argument for everything. So if you want to complain that their policies suck and now everything's expensive, and I can't afford to put gas in my car, right? They don't take the blame for it, because they say it's the Republicans' fault, because those are the evil oil companies that are raising the prices on you, right? And you go, oh yeah, because you already hate them. So it's much easier to believe some nonsensical bullcrap about them, so you don't blame the people who did it to you. Al, these people are the all grand masters of this propaganda, lying, manipulation thing. It's like, wow, they are so good at it. Imagine if you were that good at like freeing people and
that's our
providing
thing.
protection
That should be
for
our
people's
mission.
rights and
So
liberties.
we need to use right. So we use those tactics for truth. Because I tell you, if you say something long enough, people will believe it, right? So the funny thing is about truth, if you can just say the truth long enough, you can get people to start changing their mind, but they have to hear it as much. And the problem is the way our society is set up. I mean, they're getting inundated with that message.
If you want the truth, if you want the truth to be effective, then you need to take control of social media and the news media so that they're pushing the truth instead of the lies. And then people will start believing the truth in about 30 years.
Yeah.
But, 6 people screaming about the truth and an entire massive corporate media structure that's crushing them with the lie is going to win. It's obviously because that's what's been winning our whole lives. The lie is winning the day every time.
It's interesting, Greg, and it's an interesting point. I have that Pandora music, and I sign up and I make a little thing for Christian artists because there are a lot of Christian artists I like. I don't like music, just any music, but I like some of the scriptural biblical music that's out there. But it's interesting, I'll hear a couple of my guys singing, and it's great biblical truth, and then an ad pops up, and it's some totally left-wing indoctrination public service. So it's interesting, even when you're trying to listen to good, wholesome stuff on like a Pandora or Spotify or whatever, it's still the lies are still there. They creep in through these little public service announcements or an ad. One of them, as I'm listening to Christian music, it starts talking about BLM and how Black Lives Matter and how the blacks have been blah, 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 and how we need to stand. I mean, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I can't even listen to something wholesome and good without indoctrination still filtering in.
Well, so we pay for that too, right? All those
Pandora is free.
Well, no, I mean the PSAs. Those PSA campaigns that you're talking about.
Yep.
We pay for those. Those are tax subsidized.
Yeah, public service. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got you.
All right. Yeah. I brought 2 stories for today.
Okay.
We got 15 minutes. Let's do the one I led with. The black police officer fired for using the N-word on the job. Here he is. This is Delvin White. And evidently his body camera caught him during a call calling some blacks ghetto N-word. And when it took a couple of days evidently, but when it was found out, they fired him immediately. Now we're used to saying the N-word being used against the whites, Caucasians, the Irish, but because you can't say it, and they've been doing that for a long time. This is the first case I've found publicized like this where they've applied a no tolerance policy for everyone. Not, blacks can say it, whites can't. This policy is no one can, and they actually fired a black officer for doing it, which surprises me to no end. It's not something I really thought we'd see. So I wonder, is this a trend? Has the zero tolerance policy for the N-word, it's no longer good enough for whites to not say it. Now nobody's going to be able to say it. It's very
well, let me ask you, Greg. I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on this. Like, you hear a lot of profanity, and when I became a Christian, it's amazing. I immediately dropped any profane language that I ever used. I mean, it's kind of a miracle actually, because there were days when I was younger that I used words that were profane, and it's not in my vocabulary anymore. And I am definitely very sensitive when I'm around people and they use profanity. I don't like it. I don't like any of it. But I find it interesting that we never worry about any of the other profane words. And I get it. The N-word is a bad word. That would never even come in my vocabulary. So I get it. But then I look at like every other word that's being used by everybody, and there's like, we're numb. We're numb. But we've made this a political thing.
That's
That, one word, you can't say one word. And it's almost a little silly, I think. I get it.
Well, that's the key. Word. That's the key to it, Al, is the political power that existed in prohibiting some people from saying that word, and the reason why they say they were prohibiting it. It wasn't really about the word itself. It was about what they could achieve sociopolitically through the use of manipulating who can and can't say the word. It was profoundly powerful. And I don't like public profanity or people name calling or this kind of stuff, at all. However, we're supposed to live in a free society where words are not illegal, and where government doesn't have the authority to stop you from saying whatever it is you want to say. Now,
correct.
Now
that would be like, now I agree. Now, policies in your department, I think, you need to have standards in your department.
Well, true, but language, I mean, the government is specifically who is told you cannot regulate speech. The police department is part of government. It should, it should apply to them. Now, if McDonald's wants to let its employees use the N-word and cuss, well, that's up to them. The government shouldn't have any role in that, but we don't have to go to McDonald's because of what we experience when we go there. But no government institution has any reasonable or legitimate claim to be able to set standards for language. I mean, the First Amendment is pretty clear.
So let me ask you, though. Let's say you go to your Roanoke County department, and the person you're talking to, the treasurer, whatever, you're paying your taxes, whatever, and every other word is the F word. They just keep using it. Does someone there, like their superior, have a right to come and say, hey, would you mind not like using the F word every other word? I mean, it's not good. We don't like the sound of that here. They don't have a right, or do they have a right?
I don't see how you can have that policy and follow the First Amendment. Now, that's not to say that I would just abide that situation. There are other ways to deal with a government employee who is harassing.
No, not harassing. It's just their dialect. They just use it every other word. Like, I know some people like off the street that will just, like, every other word is the F word. They just like, calm down, buddy. What are you doing? And it's irritating. And also, it's not a good word, and it's obscene. And I don't want my children, I don't want my friends hearing it. So I just would think that if I went into a government building and that's just the way everybody talked, I would think, could you guys make some kind of a rule here that just stop your obscene talk? Or if you were using like real obscene about women, let's say your derogatory words about women, and you just want to use it every other word. Is that right?
It's not I don't think you can make a right and wrong out of it. It's wrong to do something like that to everybody if everybody's telling you don't do it to me. That's obviously wrong. Whether it's criminal or not is a different thing.
Well, I would agree with that. And I don't want to make it criminal, but
I'm not saying I want them to do it. What I'm saying is that the constitutional structure that's in place right now doesn't allow for that kind of regulation. If you want it to, then you need to amend the First Amendment, and then it needs to say, except government employees who deal with the public are not allowed to be profane. I mean, you have to fix that.
Yeah. Wow. That's an interesting one. I mean, because I would have to think that
obviously liberty and freedom has problems. It's not going. Liberty and freedom is not going to create a perfect world where everybody's okay with everybody's everything. What liberty and freedom creates is a world free of the controlling mechanism of elected elites from telling you what you can and can't, because that stuff's supposed to be up to us to deal with. So it's not ideal. That result is not a good one.
Right.
But I think we should have always been looking for solutions to these things that did not directly violate the Constitution. Because once you start saying, well, you're right, but we got to do this. So, the founders never meant for the First Amendment to keep us from doing this. You come up with lots of excuses. Once you start down that road, then anything you want to do that for a darn good reason is okay to do, even if the Constitution doesn't allow it, because it's a good thing to do. And so we should have demanded a better way of dealing with stuff that we have that has constitutional issues, rather than to just say, well, we'll just ignore the Constitution this time. I got you. That was the wrong way to go about it. Because now violating the Constitution what isn't violating the Constitution? We don't have a level of government or a governing body in this entire country that's not violating the Constitution as a regular course of business every single day. And we're just supposed to accept that it's okay.
Yeah.
That's how we got here.
Greg, can I go back to an earlier story, because I just got an email from the city manager, Bob Cowell, and I do want to give him credit just before we close the show. It's very quick, but he did say that the Roanoke Police Department informed the tenants yesterday that they will be removed from the site. So they need to leave, or they will be removed from the site. This could happen within the next couple days. Following the removal, the city will once again have a private contractor clear the site of debris, and will continue with our efforts in securing the property. It says that they've received no reports of children present on the site, but have asked the homeless team to verify that children are present and to alert our folks at DSS. Okay, so
they're going to kick them out.
Right there from the city manager, we're hearing that they've told them they have to leave.
You troublemaker.
It's just the right thing to do. Anyway, I wanted to give him credit. They did respond. We'll see what happens. Whether you agree with it or not, Greg, we'll see what happens. It's a great it's just an interesting thing.
You can make an argument that it's the right thing to do, but ultimately it's not any more right than leaving them alone. It's all just a point of view.
Well, okay. I'm a citizen. This is where the rubber hits the road. I'm a citizen of Roanoke. I have a business in Roanoke City. I drive by it. It's wrong.
I get why you want it to stop. I understand all the reasons, and they're not unreasonable. What I'm saying is that's different than calling it ultimate right and wrong. It's not ultimately the right thing to do to kick them off the property. It's your opinion that it's the right thing to do, but there's a lot of other opinions on that subject, and who's to say which one of them is right? Right.
But I get it. This is where we have to have dialogue with people, right?
I want those people to be happy, to be secure, and live the life they want without bothering other people's living the life they want. I don't know what you do about that. Jesus himself said the poor will always be among us. The homeless are always going to be. We're not solving the problem. They're always going to be.
Hey, Greg, one other thing I didn't read at the top. It says the property in question is privately owned.
Well, then if the owner of that property is okay with them being there.
No, I think he's not. But it says the city has initiated the process.
Right. If the
to acquire it. Okay.
Yeah, if the property owner is not okay with it, that's a completely different situation. So you're in that case, if he doesn't want them there, they got to move on. That's just how how private property works. All right. This one probably would do for a really long discussion. The last story here, we'll touch on it for just a couple of minutes. Based on responses we get, we may go back and have a longer discussion about this particular story. But there's a bill that's making it through the legislature in Kentucky that would make it a crime to taunt or insult a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, I believe it's Senate Bill 211 in Kentucky. And it mandates 3 months imprisonment for a person who accosts, insults, taunts, or challenges a law enforcement officer with offensive or derisive words. So, how do you jive that with the idea that we have free speech? That government is prohibited from making laws respecting a curtailing of free speech. I don't know how in the world they could possibly imagine that is a legitimate constitutional law, but it's doing rather well in Kentucky. The sponsor of it is a retired police officer who's in the legislature of Kentucky. I understand what he's up to. I mean, I get it. It's just, how do you have a law like this where you're going to throw people in jail for 3 months for taunting or insulting a police officer? And what's the definition of insulting? Just how far will they stretch the insult? Like when that cop that lied to me, the story I told you all week before last, that pulled me over and lied to me about the reason he pulled me over. Am I insulting him if I say you're lying? That's an insult. Calling him a liar. Do I go to jail for calling out the liar because he's a cop? What is going on here?
Yeah, I know. And Greg, the only thing I can say is, when I see some of this stuff where protesters, and you're going to agree with me because, your definition of liberty is, as long as you don't touch me, you have the freedom to do what you want to do. But I see so much where they're shoving police. We have police so that they protect us. We've all voluntarily said, yeah, we can't all, well, what we're saying is we want some mechanism that would help protect our rights. And so we've devised a system where we have people that are law enforcers. And the problem is, when I've seen it on television, it always seems like these protesters are physically putting police officers in harm's way. And I know we had discussion that, they're meant to protect us, the citizen, and they shouldn't care about their own lives. But the reality is, if you allow people to physically abuse officers, you're not going to have a whole lot of people volunteering to be our defense. So there's a balance there.
Right. But
now, the words, I'm with you on that. Yeah, I mean, you want to just say something. We've gone so far the other way that now we're going so far the other way. And I wish we could just have a rule that says, a law that says, you touch somebody, you're going to go to jail. You have no right to touch a police officer.
Well, that's already illegal. But what if the police officer...
They never enforce it.
What if the police... Oh, yes, they do. They do.
I'm watching television. I don't see
assaulting a police officer is one of those charges they throw onto anything. I mean, if a police officer... In fact, let me tell you the story. There was a jogger. This lady, I think she was in Texas, and she's got earphones on. And she's jogging down this street and jogs across the street. Well, the cop sees her jog across the street, and she didn't do it at the corner. So it's jaywalking. So
that's a Barney Fife.
So as she crosses the street, he comes out of the place he's standing, catches back up to her, and grabs her by the arm. Now, she doesn't see this happening. He's yelling, stop. She can't hear because she's wearing earphones while she jogs. So he catches her, grabs her by the arm. She thinks some molester has gotten her, and she does what she's trained to in those women's, self-defense classes, right? She got grabbed, so she elbows, turns to get out of it. She got charged with felony assault of an officer for that.
Right, that's wrong.
And that kind of stuff happens. I mean, it happens a lot. And you're right. It's wrong. But when I was saying police, the people that are in government service, that are in community service, their first concern should be the people they serve, not themselves. That doesn't mean that a police officer who's being murdered by rioters has to just let it. What it means is that when the cop follows me into Kroger because my inspection sticker's outdated, that he doesn't jump out of the car grabbing his gun screaming at me because I might be, even though I there's no reason to believe, I might be a threat, because his first concern is his own safety. Those are different situations.
Yeah. Well, no, I got you. And I think in this issue of using words and protesting, I mean, protesting is using your words and you're unhappy about something, and we have a right to protest. What I've seen is so much destruction, and it's most of the time it's on the left. I mean, on the right, the big issues of protest are pro-life rallies or standing outside of Planned Parenthood. They're so peaceful all the time, and they get harassed a lot. But the left seems to have destruction on their mind all the time, and nothing ever seems to happen. It just seems they let it go, and that's on property.
Well, yeah,
but,
and
with the police,
in the most public instances, you're absolutely right, and that's because the political powers that be are using the destructive nature of that group for a political end. They don't want to put them in jail for it. They wanted them to do it, and they need them to do it again tomorrow. So that's why you back off and you let them destroy the city. It's because there's an end, it's part of a long operation with an end game, and they're not going to enforce something like that on them when they want them to do it and it's helpful to their goals. That's why you see that happen. I mean, come on. They burned down all these cities, and most of the perpetrators never get touched, and we don't even talk or demand that something be done. But some people get led into the Capitol building, and we act like it's the War of 1812.
Yes.
Obviously, political concerns, the political war that's going on in our country, that's what that's all about. It's not about right and wrong. It's not about enforcing the law. It's not about a legitimate attack on the Capitol. None of that. That's all nonsense. It's about using and manufacturing the events of the day so that you can manipulate people to get what you want in the political arena. That's the whole ball of wax.
I would agree. It's being used politically.
That's it.
Yep.
All right. We're over an hour.
Good show. Yeah. Good information.
It is. We'll be back Thursday at 9:30, and good to have you. Good to see you this morning, Al.
Yeah, thank you. And just look forward to keeping people updated. If you got anything you want us to talk about, let us know. But I like the conversation we're having, and we're really peeling the onion on a lot of things, looking a little deeper into it.
I may bring my guitar on the show Thursday and use it to accentuate my arguments. If I need if I need a little harmony there to bring home my point.
Yeah, I'll make sure I have my earplugs in. I've never heard you play, but although, you got to be good. You got all those guitars in the back, unless it's just for show.
I practice really hard. This is what I did. This is what I did when I quit politics, is I started writing movie scripts and practicing music again when I quit politics. I'm so much happier.
This could be the end of our show, though.
If I play guitar on the show?
The most short-lived radio podcast. All right. Look forward to it on Thursday.
All right. Have a good one. Thanks, everybody.